For today's video, I'm going to be going over the Sky Viper E1700. Now, basically what it is the new S1750, the upgraded S1700, the new model, only it's not been assembled. Basically, you get a drone that needs to be put together, and the only stuff you really get in addition to a regular S1750 are these new, actually it's just decals. So you get your pick of a bunch of different decals that you can put on it. I'm just start clockwise here. Let me start with the stuff on top. So these decals can basically, I already put this canopy on by accident. Basically, you can get creative and you can put a bunch of different types of decals. They've got some design suggestions. I'm probably not going to do it, but it does kind of give you some ideas there. So this is a basic frame of it. It looks kind of flimsy, and it is built to be flexible, but these arms are going to attach to it. These are the front arms and these are the bottom arms. So they're split in half, and then you put the arm here. And, well, sorry, it'll fit in right on top of here. This is probably the trickiest part, because you got to fit the motor in, then you got to fit the arm over the top of it. I've actually tore down and rebuilt several S1700s, and this really isn't much different from the previous generation. And you've got different screws, and the instructions, they're all labeled A, B, and C screws. So there might be D screws too. Oh, it goes all the way to E. Well, anyway, so yeah, you get different types of screws that are going to fit into different parts of the quad, and the instructions tell you actually which screws would go where. It's quite a bit here. Honestly, it looks like a lot, but it really isn't very difficult. Not to me anyway, because I've actually rebuilt ones that I broke. And so this should actually be a little bit easier. More instructions, and then there's a little bit more on the controller itself. And the controller construction is a bit revealing, so I'm going to get into that after I go over all the different parts here. This is just the regular instructions that you get when you buy the S1750. And then this looks like they forgot something, and they printed off something real quick at the end about how to put the PCB in and where to position the new antenna. So you got your arms, your spare props, battery charger, battery 650 milliamp hour. So this is the bottom, and this is the battery tray, which this is optional. So depending on how you want to build it, you may not actually need to put the battery tray in, or may not want to. Sometimes it's easier just to put Velcro here on the bottom of it, and then you don't have to worry about your LiPo fitting into this tray. I mean, it's a pretty big tray, but not all of them fit. And let's see, the back legs here. This is a different screwdriver than what you normally get from Sky Viper. This is what you normally get. So I don't know. It might fit every screw. The smaller screws is all I'm worried about for it. But that's all right. And this is part of the controller. They always give you the option in using these PlayStation type pads or hobby grade type joysticks. These are what I always like using. They feel so much better as far as directional control goes. Then you've got the shell of the controller, which is interesting for one major reason. It's got a JST wire, which means there's going to be a female JST on the PCB board, which I'll get to it. But I'll explain where I'm going as far as that goes here in a bit. Oh, I just fell out. This is basically the antenna. There is a true antenna, but it's not going to be as long as this. But I'm going to guess that it's made to fit into here. So it's not totally fake. Prop guards, which I never use, but and I'm not going to put them on for this build, but always good to have. So the motors, these are 7mm motors. What's nice is they've got the plug-ins for them are labeled to be either clockwise or counterclockwise. So that'll make it a little bit easier to figure out where you plug them in. And that just brings me to this part here, which is the new flight controller. And just for reference, I'm going to get out the previous E1700 flight controller. It looks almost exactly the same. I mean, just as far as the general layout goes, but now you've got black connectors to show you where these motors are supposed to hook into. And when you flip it over, this is the previous E1700. Now this is what they were calling an antenna before. And some guys, to try and improve the range, would actually solder wire or coax cable to this to try and improve the range. At least on the transmitter, I saw a few guys do that. But now, this bit right here doesn't even exist. They've got just a true wire, and it's actually comparable to what you get out of a hobby grade flight controller as far as the antenna goes. So that's a bit interesting to me. But when they advertise that 2x flight range, that's part of where this comes in. That comes in. And then this is what they call the PCB board for the transmitter. And there's some interesting stuff here. Again, I'm not going to dig out the previous E1700 PCB, but it had a little board on it as an antenna, just like this, very similar to it anyway, and it was about right here. But now, as you can see, they've got an actual wire. I don't know if positionally if it's actually going to fit into a duct. I don't know. I'll have to find out, but I don't know if it's really going to fit very well into this piece right here. So I don't know if this is actually even functional, or if it's going to have any real purpose, or if it's just for show. But regardless, I've tested the E1750, this new model, and it does have better range. So they lived up to their word. Whether this is just cosmetic or not, I don't really care at this point. I mean, the bottom line is they did improve the range, and they did what needed to be done. So to me, that's interesting. Now, the second interesting part, this is the female JST, which runs from, sorry, this is a mess. So this is where you would put your 3 AAA batteries, and then you would plug it in right here. When I'm building this, I'm going to plug it in right here. And then once I put the batteries in, the power is going to travel from the batteries to here. But this is the exact same connector on the Sky Viper itself. And if you want to, for a little proof of concept, let's say you're a little bit tired of using AAA batteries, or trying to have them dig up AAA batteries all the time, and you've got a bunch of these 3.7 volt lipoles laying around. Maybe you've got extras just for this drone. Now there's this option. Now the only I guess negative here is these wires, this solder point right here, it's not made to take a lot of stress and a lot of movement. So you may have to get creative in wiring this out the back, or it comes out here, to try and get it to where it isn't going to move around a lot, because if that's not good. If this moves around a lot, eventually these solders are going to give way, or the wire's just going to flat out break. So you would definitely need to, if you're going to bypass using AAAs, you'd probably want to try and figure out a way to secure this right here maybe, or maybe attach this connector to have it poke out of the plastic real tight to where it doesn't have any play. But just as an option, I think that's interesting, and it's cool that I was able to find out by buying this kit, instead of taking apart my existing E1700, what you can potentially do. Okay, so that was part one of the E1700 overview and review. In part two, I'll go over the actual build and final result of it, and then I'll give you my final suggestions on whether or not this is a good drone to buy or not.